Anytime someone asks for recommendations of isometric hack and slash ARPGs, you always get the same handful of recommendations. Most people recommend the big live service ARPGs like Path of Exile, Last Epoch, and Diablo IV. You'll get some indie recommendations in there, so games like No Rest for the Wicked or Torchlight Infinite. But my personal favorite is when people get deep into their retro bag and start recommending some old school dungeon crawlers. Obviously, games like Diablo and Diablo II just go without saying at this point. One of my personal favorites, Grim Dawn, gets recommended quite a bit. You'll get some folks who will say Torchlight 1 and 2, Titan Quest, people bring up the Baldur's Gate Dark Alliance games, Champions of Norath. There are a good handful of games to recommend, but the recommendations usually end there. A game I've never heard anyone recommend is Darkstone. Darkstone is actually one of the OGs in this genre, releasing back on PC in 1999, which was a few years after the original Diablo, but before Diablo II. Despite most reviewers at the time pointing out this heavy inspiration from Diablo, the game was very well received from critics at the time, with GameSpot nominating it for Role-Playing Game of the Year that year. However, it went on to sell pretty poorly, with the PC version netting about 130,000 copies a few years after release. So fast forward to today in 2026, most people don't know about this game because, well, most people didn't play it, which is a shame because after spending about 30 hours or so with this game, I think it's one of the best dungeon crawling ARPG experiences you can have. So in this video, I want to highlight Darkstone and discuss my experience with this game and why I think it's worth picking up and playing 27 years after its original release. Before we begin, the footage you're seeing here is from the PlayStation version of the game running on a PS3. That's important here because the PlayStation version is actually different from the PC version in some key ways that I'll highlight a bit later. Also, I want to mention that I did not play this game as a kid. I first bought this game in the summer of 2025 and played through it for the first time recently. So the opinions here aren't coming from rose-tinted nostalgia glasses. I'm someone who found this game recently and feels like it has something special to offer even in today's ARPG landscape. So in Darkstone, you choose from one of 4 classes: warrior, wizard, assassin, or monk. And you travel the world looking for 7 crystals that'll be used to summon something called the Time Orb that you can use to slay Drac, who is this evil monk who has turned himself into a dragon. So yeah, this is your typical high stakes ARPG story, save the world, slay minions. This is what these games do to set up putting dozens of enemies in your screen for you to hack away at. One of the areas where Darkstone really shines is in its atmosphere and pacing. It uses really dramatic lighting and additional artistic bells and whistles to create an overworld and dungeons that feel truly immersive. The lighting in the dungeons is one of my favorite aspects of this game. It just gets really dark down there. So dark that you would be wise to carry a torch or keep the light spell on your hotkey for situations where it's pitch black darkness. There are little flames and torches on the wall that splash a little bit of visibility here and there, but overall the dungeons are dim. And it creates an effective and spooky atmosphere. That overall feeling that a monster is lurking just around the dark corner is ever present and makes everything feel tense from the beginning to the end. This is in stark contrast to the overworld sections in the game where you're out in the sunlight, and this contrast between the brightness in the overworld and the town compared to the drab darkness of the dungeons help give everything more impact. Overall, the developers did an awesome job handcrafting this world to give impact to the different activities and quests, and I've loved just existing in this world. They also enlisted the help of French singer Audrin, who composed an original theme song for this game. Her character is actually in the town, and if you put some gold in her cup, she sings the entire theme song for you.
Shelter, a mountain too high. Save your soul, you gotta fight the evil and the dragon with your weapon. Save your soul, or the darkstone will shine. Step by step, you'll find a way to save your soul. All the darkstone will shine.
It's small touches like this that just give this game such a rich, fleshed out feel. Darkstone wears its Diablo inspiration on its sleeve, but I think calling it a Diablo clone really doesn't do justice to the innovations it introduced at the time. Again, this was 1999, before Diablo II released. Darkstone introduced full 3D graphics with a camera you can rotate for full visibility of the environment. This is something that later games like Grim Dawn would adopt to great effect, while other games have stuck with a static camera angle. The PC version of the game actually allows you to play as two characters simultaneously, which could be seen as a more robust implementation of the mercenary system Diablo II introduced later. This is something I haven't had the opportunity to play around with myself because this feature unfortunately didn't make it into the PS1 version of the game, but I do plan to play the PC version at some point to try this out. This was one of the features that critics seemed to enjoy the most that seemed to set Darkstone apart from Diablo back in those days. Additionally, Darkstone introduced some more traditional RPG mechanics to the game, in the form of your character's age and also a hunger meter. The age mechanic is pretty interesting. Basically, as you progress through the game, your character gets older, and just like in real life, once you hit 30 years old, it's all downhill from there. I'm joking, but at 30, your character does start to get some stat debuffs. You can manage this through potions of youth, which decrease your age, but it's nice to see this mechanic, a reminder of your character's mortality. In that same vein, you must actually feed your character food. If you let them go too hungry, they start to lose health and are less effective. Dungeons are littered with food pickups, so you always have food on hand from my experience. But seeing these additional RPG mechanics that were layered on top, they weren't groundbreaking, but in my opinion, they add to the immersion of the game. Always having to deal with these additional systems that are directly related to the humanity of your character. The parts of Darkstone that were lifted directly from Diablo are very refined and offer a tight experience in comparison. The loot feels good, with gear upgrades coming in at a steady enough pace when you consider, the loot dropping in the dungeons as well as the items that are available in the shop in town. The enemy designs, while they're not revolutionary, they get the job done. You'll be fighting the traditional spiders, rats, skeleton warriors, and humanoid lizards. The bosses are solid progression checks that will have you rethinking the decisions of your character build. I've actually personally had to restart my adventure twice due to getting wrecked at boss fights and learning how to build a better warrior as a result. There are tons of different weapon types and spells to mix and match and create unique, interesting characters across each class. Dungeons and quests are randomized, so no two playthroughs are exactly the same. And you can play through the game on higher difficulty levels for a near endless experience with your character. Ultimately, Darkstone delivers on offering a solid ARPG experience with great fundamentals, engaging systems, meaningful combat encounters, an engrossing world, and challenging in-game content. True to the Diablo formula while offering its own style, standing on its own as an excellent game in its own right. Okay, so maybe I've convinced you to have an appreciation for Darkstone and what it brought to the table back in 1999. However, why would you want to play Darkstone now in 2026? Well, for me, the answer to that question lies with the state of ARPGs on the market now. Don't get me wrong here. I love the current ARPGs and what they offer. I'm currently playing through Season 11 of Diablo IV and having a great time with it for what it is. But it's undeniable that ARPGs have changed in a way to prioritize faster leveling, power fantasy, and a speed meta in the endgame. This results in an experience where the journey is cheapened and the in-game grind gets overstimulating and exhausting. Often after I spend enough time grinding out a game like Diablo 4, Diablo 3, or Path of Exile, I really need a palate cleanser type of experience just to reset, slow things down a bit, and enjoy a game with a bit more of a journey to it. Darkstone really scratches that itch in a way few other ARPGs do. It offers meaningful, tense encounters that can't be easily blasted through, impactful gear progression where every new weapon drop or trip to the shop feels significant, a world that's handcrafted to engage you rather than serving as background noise for a seasonal loot grind. I can tell this game is going to be special to me for a long time. I wish it had more of an impact on the genre. I wish it had more sales success, but ultimately, I'm just glad I found it when I did. and that I was able to experience this. I hope that as time passes and more people discover this game, the next time someone is asking for ARPG recommendations and folks start getting into their retro bag, recommending some old gems, maybe someone will recommend Darkstone and pass on the legacy of this classic RPG, keeping it alive for generations to come.